Hey folks, welcome back to the channel and our final look at the Gray Zone patch. This is the Night Ops patch, the big one that hit. We did a video that was our first impressions, but now that I've got about 80 hours with the new patch, I've gotten through it really good. I wanted to do another patch that was a deeper dive and a better explanation, just like I said we were going to do. Now this patch drastically changes the game, even if you've played a couple hundred hours. The addition of the night cycle, the day-night cycle, along with how they rework the tasks, the new weapons, all of that stuff. There's plenty of new content to come back here and check out. It's also at a point that if you've been sitting on the fence, this might be the little bit that pushes you over. They've added some more depth to the world and stuff like that, but we'll get into that in the video a little bit later. So let's get into the details here. All of your guys' burning questions. First up is the performance. This is one of the leading questions everybody has about this, and it has been improved. This improvement is pretty substantial, depending on your machinery, of course. Now, how much increase in performance you're going to get depends on machine to machine. This thing's still not going to run well if you're running on a 10 series card or not a very good processor. I think that's pretty obvious, though. I think I have to say that for some reason. For me personally, on my pretty good rig, the performance went from about 60 to 70 frames up to well over 100 in most areas without using frame gen. With frame gen, I can push like 170, 200 frames depending on my settings, but that's not important. Important part is no frame gen. I'm able to get about 100 frames pretty steady. It'll dip into the 90s and 80s in some of the more intense areas, but out in the middle of the jungle, I'll be like over 110. But the only way you're going to know how much the performance has been increased is if you get on and test with your machine and tweak your settings. The game is still in a state where if you just load it up and start playing, and it runs well, you're probably pretty lucky. You do have to tweak settings. You're gonna have to make some adjustments on your graphics card. You're gonna have to make sure all your settings are right, like your XMP profiles and things like that with your RAM. Your computer has to be running good for this game to run good. Just keep that in mind. That hasn't changed. With that out of the way, let's get into the meat and potatoes of what this update is, and that is the Night Ops. So first up, we'll talk flashlights. These are best for close-up visibility, though they do work out like 40, 50, 60 meters and light up bad guys enough so you can see them. They're not overwhelming, so if somebody's shining a flashlight at you, it doesn't completely blind you like it does in Tarkov, but they are impactful. And the interesting thing is the difference between the different flashlights is very clearly visible. All the way from the really cheap NC Star flashlights up to some of the higher end tactical lights, you can tell the difference in how big the light is, how visible the cone is, how dispersed the lighting is. They did little bits and different pieces to all these lights. So that's really good, and it brings in a whole new dynamic to the game with light discipline, because we've busted people a couple of times in the jungle now where we didn't know they were there until we started their flashlights turning on and off, and then we were able to sneak up and get the drop on them. Now, the more important side of this is the NVGs. That's what everybody wants to talk about. We got three kinds of NVGs with this update: the PVS 7s, which are kind of the bottom tier, PVS 14s, which are middle tier, and PVS 31s, which are the top tier white phosphorus dual tube kind of fancy looking ones. They're pretty good. Now, as I've said before, this is probably one of the most realistic interpretations that I've ever seen in video games with NVGs, and that is actually going to turn some people off. NVGs aren't this magic see in the middle of the night that you see kind of with Hollywood or in other video games. They do help you see at night. They do provide a massive advantage, but they do come with downsides. And Gray Zone Warfare has incorporated those downsides in a couple of different ways. Things like the inability to use them with certain attachments, so you can't put on NVGs and look behind an LPVO, for example. And if you have a non-NVIS compatible red dot, you're not going to see shit when you look through it. But they've also implemented IR lasers and torches, so that you have lights and lasers that you can only see when you're under NVGs. And with this, they added canted aiming as well, so that if you do have an LPVO on your rifle and you want to canted aim and use a laser for your target designation, that is entirely possible. These changes pretty much completely change the way the game is played. The AI reacts differently based on night or daytime, i.e. they don't engage you from far away. In fact, sometimes it's kind of buggy in some way, but you can almost walk right up on top of AI and they don't even engage you until you pretty much trip over them. So good or bad, that is in the game right now. And most games that when you're playing at night, the nighttime is a kind of a chore. It's not as much fun. It's not a preference, at least it isn't for me. This game makes it a preference. I actually enjoy running missions at night over the daytime in most cases, simply because it's a little bit more, you feel a little bit more secure. The atmosphere is cooler. The NVGs are fun to use. Flashlights work really, really well. and it's actually enjoyable to do stuff at night in this game. So that stuff alone, we got a huge video to go through with all the other changes, but those couple of things that I've mentioned already are definitely, in my opinion, make this worth coming back and playing again. Now, the next big burning question people are going to have or have had is the AI. Is the AI still busted? Short answer is yes. The AI is not where they want it. They know that. They are working towards that. The big AI patches, I don't think it's the next one. I don't remember when the roadmap it is. It might be a patch or two away, which means, you know, a year away. But they have made great improvements, and they are actively working on the AI. We've seen like 4 updates in the last week and a half of them trying to tweak the AI to get it more, what's the word? More enjoyable to experience. So things like them instantly lasering you, how effective armor is, them being able to find you right away when you shoot at them, how they interact when you shoot at them. There's lots of things that have been worked on for this, to where a lot of times if you engage AI and you move positions, that AI might be shooting, but they're going to be shooting at the bushes or the last position they saw you at. And you can rotate around them and shoot them in the side with a nice little flank. That is entirely possible. They're doing that. So it is this pretty broad spectrum of experiences with the AI, because they will still, especially the higher end AI at like Fort Nerith or, you know, Tiger Bay, they will laser you and kill you. But it's kind of the expectation when you're fighting AI in these higher end areas. Now, beyond this, one of the biggest issues I had, one of the biggest drawbacks I saw with the game is the world felt empty. It didn't feel filled out. There wasn't a lot of detail, or at least not as much detail to make the world felt lived in. And they've changed that quite a bit. We've got all sorts of interactable items now: lights, lanterns, fuse boxes, generators, light switches, all of that kind of stuff you can interact with. And there's even some more things, you know, loot boxes and things like that. They've added like ammo cans and different loot containers. But the world fill, if you will, the things that fill up the game environment that make it feel more immersive, they've taken a few steps with that. There's insects now. You know, you've got fireflies, butterflies, and cockroaches. There's little things in world filled, just like dead people and animals that are scattered all over the place, and just more stuff to make the world fill up a little bit. Now, it's not all the way there. There is still some repetitiveness to it, and they still have a ways to go, but that's how this stuff works. These small details get built up and built up. Like if you look at Tarkov, for example, which is probably one of the most all-in games with how much stuff there is in the world that fill it out, it's taken them, you know, 8 years to get there. So that's kind of where it looks like Madfinger Games is going with this, is they're going to add little bits and little bits as each patch comes along to fill this world out and make it feel more alive and more like it's a real place, and not like, honestly, like a Call of Duty or Battlefield map that is just copy pasted stuff dropped all over to fill out and give you cover. Now, one of the things that they've added that I don't like personally is they've added durability to weapons and gear. So all parts on the weapons and stuff, they degrade. Some matter, some don't. For example, like scope rings, the durability on those don't matter, but if your suppressor drops to 0% durability, it stops working. And as the durability decreases, the effectiveness of the attachments decrease. So your grips, your muzzle brakes, things like that, their percentages and their bonuses start to drop as the durability drops. Along with this, things like scopes get scratched up and dirty and hard to see through. And then the guns just kind of aren't as accurate themselves. And the reason I don't like this isn't because I don't like durability, it's because there's no way to repair stuff yet. That is coming down the road in future patches, but they've got durability in here kind of as, I think, as a money sink, because it does force you to cycle your gear out. The biggest burn is when you die. You lose 10% on your items. When you die, durability drops by 10%. The burn rate on everything else isn't that high. You know, I've been shot in the chest with armor, and the armor only took like 3% damage. So much less than other games in that term, but the idea that we can't repair any of our armor, any of our gear, our NVGs, any of that kind of stuff means that if you die a couple of times with it, it's pretty much junk. You know, for example, NVGs, these are down to like 60%, 60-70%, whatever they are. You can see how scratched up and how it's getting hard to see through them. And then things like damaged scopes, they work, but man, they're brutal to look through. So there is durability. They are tweaking it. It looks like they're making some changes as the days go on, but it is not one of those things that I'm happy with, simply because we don't have a way to rectify it yet. Now, on the flip side of this, we got valuable loot. Now, valuable loot comes in all sorts of different degrees of what you get. There's a lot more cash in the world on the guys and in cash registers. But you get everything from like credit cards, jewelry, you know, necklaces and rings, phones, there's cameras, laptops, alcohol, all sorts of things. And they sell from anywhere from like 100, maybe 200. I think I've seen below 100 on a couple of things, but not much. Most of it's over $100 each. And some stuff is up over $1,000. So there is a lot more stuff in the world out there for you to find and loot and bring back and sell, sort of counteract some of this money sink durability thing. At least when you go out, you can come back with some money and you're not like picking up 9 attachments and little ammo and stuff just to sell back to the vendors. Now on to helicopters and LZ changes. This is another, I want to say hot button, but a common concern or interest that people have about the game. The biggest change that they've made with the helicopters is that they spawn in near where you call them in. So that means that if you call in a helicopter up at Hunter's Bay, instead of for Mithras, the helicopter having to come out of the Mithras spawn point, fly all the way up there to pick you up and fly back, that helo spawns right up there at Hunter's Bay now. It flies down within usually 30 seconds or 45 seconds, picks you up and you're on your way. So while they didn't add more helicopters, there still are only 4. A change like this is pretty much the equivalent of adding helicopters, because there's that 3 minutes or less that isn't being used now, waiting on that helicopter to fly all the way up to get you. And on top of that, when you're in a hurry to get out of place, it's not that big of a deal because you can call the helo and not sit around for 5 minutes and wait for it. Now, in addition to this, they've added a bunch more LZs, and they've moved LZs around to help with some of the issues of running into more players, running into other factions and players at these LZs. So, for example, some of the really close LZs, like Lima 2 used to be right in here, really close to YBL. They've moved it way out here, along with India 1 used to be really close to Bon Pa, down in this rough vicinity, and they've literally moved it 200-300 meters away. And doing this means that players are less likely to be able to react, because if you're in Bon Pa and you hear a helicopter, you could run to the edge and see them land and not even be necessarily extract camping or LZ camping them, but the opportunity is there. You're not going to wait for them to get on the ground. How that works now with these spread out LZs and additional LZs that they've added, it makes that process quite a bit better with getting in and out. Now, in addition to this, they've shortened the routes on several of these. They cut some of the corners a little bit sharper, especially near ground zero. Instead of flying way out and around, they cut the corner. They've made the helicopters a little bit faster, so all that helps with the timing. You do have a 5-second invulnerability when you get off the helo, so as soon as the helo lands and you jump off, you have 5 seconds before anybody can hurt you. That disappears once you start shooting, so keep that in mind, that if you shoot, that vulnerability doesn't exist. And while you're on the helos, you're invulnerable as well. Another great addition, one of the most requested one, is the active headset muffle or a mute. So when you hop on a helicopter, you hit the O button, the helicopter mutes, and it's not quite so loud anymore, and it makes the flights much more comfortable.
Raven on station and ready to pick you up. Ready up, we're taking off.
Just don't forget to turn that off when you land, because you can't hear anything with it. So if you go run it off and don't turn that off, you're not going to hear people moving around you. And then one other really nice little feature that they added is when you call in a helicopter, the LZ shows up on your compass now with a timer. So you don't have to go to the map to see the timer. You can see it right on your compass at the top center of the screen. Now for guns, we got some new guns in the game, and we'll go through those here real quick. The first one I got this thing kind of built out is a nice little 1911. They added that along with 45 caliber. It's got a whole host of attachments and other things you can do with it. Pistol recoil is still kind of weird, as you can see, but we did get the 1911. Now, in addition to this, we have the MP5 as well, which was a really nice addition. It comes in 2 variants of it. This is the MP5 SD. You can also just buy the regular one. Let me go over to Banshee here. So you can see it's just a regular MP5. So, and you can suppress this too. So they've got it set up to where you can run multiple MP5s, different kinds, whether you want to go the full SD or not. They shoot pretty much like you'd expect an MP5 to shoot, and they can be effective Once you get into armored enemies, they're a little bit less effective, but they did buff how shotguns and pistol ammo function, so they are actually somewhat viable now. Shotguns are super viable because of their slugs. Pistol ammo 9mm and 45 run into some struggle with the more armored enemies, because you're really giving up the ammo that can get through their armor. You have to hit them pinpoint in the head or in the heart to actually kill them. Sprayed body shots really don't work very well. We also got the AK-74U, which I know is a favorite of a lot of people now. Just a shorty little baby AK. Works pretty good. It's got plenty of attachments. Shoots 5.45 just like a lot of the other guns do. It shoots 5.45 in the same way. It's nothing any crazy special. As you can see, it just shoots like another regular AK. Then we get into there's an AK-12, which I don't have, which is a 5.45 AK. There is the AK-15, which is a 7.62 AK, and it looks pretty similar. Obviously, there's a difference between the AK-12 and the AK-15 because of the mag, but outside they look pretty similar. And then you've got the AK-19, which is a 5.56 variant. So if you want to run 5.56 on an AK, you have that as well. And then there's also an AK-308 now. Looks similar to these, shoots 308 ammo, so 7.62 by 51, so your M80s and things like that. I suspect the reason it was added is because the weapon models are probably pretty similar. So the AK-12, 15, 19, 308, it was pretty easy for them to copy paste a lot of these guns because their externals look so similar. It made it a lot easier to add multiple guns with less work. So that's probably why that's our first 308 weapon. Hopefully we'll get things like scars and fouls and stuff down the road, but we'll see. Now, like we said before, we got new flashlights and tactical devices. There's a whole host of them. You can see there's on this thing, I've got a couple of flashlights I was using for examples. There is PERSTs and PEQs and all sorts of fancy light and laser devices. I think there's 7 or 8 or 9 they've added all in, depending on which ones you grab or which ones you look at. So there are lots of stuff to work with as far as having lasers and lights on your weapons. The next big thing they added is also here in the inventory we'll go look at, and that is containers. So we got a med case here. I got these through task items. There's also an ammo case, which again through tasks, and down at the bottom, make sure my head's not in the way, also a cooler to hold food. There are also weapon and armor cases. I haven't got those yet, so I can't show them to you, but Badfinger Games said that they were added as well. And like I said earlier, pistol and shotgun ammo is more viable. Your 12 gauge Sabo slugs will take out most enemies. I think the class 3+ armor they won't get through, so any of the enemies running your 6B23s, the slugs don't work on them if you hit them in the armor, but all the other armors they go pretty much clean through. You want to use those in the starter town. The buckshots work great, but so do the slugs. I like the slugs because you can drop enemies from a long ways away. You hit them in the chest, they go down pretty quick. It is really effective. The pistol ammo, it's another story. It is effective, but usually if you're using armor piercing or the penetrator ammo, which this is, it doesn't have a very big wound channel, so it isn't super good unless you're hitting the vitals very directly. But when it comes to using like the hollow points, this stuff decimates the unarmored enemies. So it is really good in the starter town or anywhere where you're going to be fighting starter enemies, that's for sure. Now for the task systems, we've gotten quite a few changes here, and it's been a huge overhaul. You can see I've done quite a few of them. A lot of them have changed in almost all of them have changed in small ways, whether that's just how you interact with the world. There isn't really any more tasks where you walk into an area and it just, okay, you're good. You have to interact with something, you have to pick something up. Sometimes you have to interact and pick something up. They've changed that to be more interactive, which I think is a good thing. Some people are going to complain because it's more steps, but it makes you more connected to the task and it makes it make more sense. They've also moved a lot of tasks down. So if you are going back and doing these tasks based on memory, you're going to be hung up. Even at the very starter town, most of the tasks have been changed enough that if you try to do them all on memory, you're going to get lost. So make sure you're reading the task dialogue. These are all finished, but they do a pretty good job of explaining things to you. This task, for example, shows you how they have added night mode. There are a lot of tasks that you can only do between the 2205 window frame. That's what they have now. They have tasks that you can do whenever you want, and then they have tasks that can only be done at night, and they're generally the kind of tasks you would think where they want you to sneak around, they want you to gather intel, they want you to do it without being noticed. That's kind of the vibe you get when you're doing the night ones. Now, along with this, because they've added, I think they added 22 total tasks. They also changed a lot of the geography and topography of the world. They've added lots of things, lakes and entire new open areas, and they've moved LZs around. Like Foxtrot True used to be by the waterfall here. They completely changed how this looked, and they added a new LZ up here further away. There's a bunker now at Hunter's Paradise. There's Japanese bunkers scattered all over, old Japanese bunkers scattered all the way through here, along with the LZ on top of the mountain. So there's quite a bit more interesting stuff. I haven't gone to check out these areas yet that are all new. I've noticed there's some buildings inside Ground Zero now. There's a checkpoint here you fly over a lot that's got bad guys on it that leads into Ground Zero. So this is all kind of stuff I want to check out. I haven't yet, but they have done quite a few changes simply to the layout of how the world is, and more points of interest and things to explore and check out, which is really cool. I mean, I was even looking, I noticed this river came down here, and I don't know what this is, but I want to go check it out. There's like a little village up here. I don't know if there's tasks that lead up there, but I'll go check it out and see what this is and see if there's any Easter eggs like this cabin in the woods. It's an Easter egg, I'm pretty sure, to Cabin in the Woods, the horror movie, I guess thriller movie, whatever you want to call it. I think that's what this is. But there's all sorts of stuff like that, which is super cool for me. I like finding stuff like that. You might not, but there is a bunch more of it in the game now. Now, another big problem we had, and this was actually one of the things that pushed me off the game, was quest key spawns. They are so much more frequent now. You find all the keys you need. Keys are rarely a hang up. There are a few you do get hung up on, but that's just because players haven't really figured them out yet. They're mostly static spawns. Things like there's a key up at Hunter's Bay that you need for the bunker. It's part of the Butcher quest line, I think, or whatever. They talk about the Butcher in it. I can't remember exactly what it is, but the key spawns in his little office at Hunter's Paradise, or his little workroom, or whatever you want to call it. And they've added that for all of them. I found YBL key, a YBL generator key, you know, the sawmill office key, and like I said, there's a couple of keys up at Hunter's Paradise or at Falling Airfield that actually spawn on desks and tables, and they spawn in they might have like 2 or 3 spawns, but not a lot, and they're there all the time, and you can pick them up. I usually pick them up, bring them back, give them to people who might need them. So along with that, we got the donation box, and it's kind of a weird segue, but I want to bring it up. It's just this little box here. It's empty, but like if I have extra keys, like I think this is a sawmill storage shed key. Yeah, it's an extra key. I can come in here and I can just drop this key in there and it stays. And if anybody needs it, they've got it. Or if you have extra gear, extra ammo, extra whatever you want, you don't need it, you can throw it right in there and it stays and anybody can use it. Now, one of the other things that's going to get a mixed reception that they've done with the tasks is, instead of, you know, you used to go to YBL and you would do all of your YBL tasks, and then maybe like halfway through you would jump up to Hunter's Paradise or something. I don't remember exactly. But you had these big blocks of tasks you would do in one area, and it would just be back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. After the starter town, you don't do that anymore. Well, the way it is now is you get, once you go to leave your starter town, you get a task at all 3 locations. And as you work through those 3 locations, it's going to bounce you around between YBL, Hunter's Paradise, Bonpaw, Falling Airfield, Blue Lagoon. All of those places you're going to bounce around, and eventually you do get to where you start getting tasks at Fort Nerith and Tiger Bay and Midnight Sapphire. So it's just a progression thing. It keeps you from fighting in one place, which some people like that because they could just knock them all out and they didn't have to go back there. But now you're kind of bouncing around, and it keeps things kind of more interesting and more mixed up because you're not always in the same area constantly. Now, another really cool little change that people aren't going to notice right away is an expanded health panel. I can't really, we'll see if we can throw some B-roll up for it, but it basically, what it is when you get shot, it gives you information on what direction you were shot from as far as where the bullet came from. You can inspect bodies now, and when you look at a body, it shows you that same information along with what they died to. So it's just a little bit more information as you're fighting through that you can get. Now, some other just nice quality of life features we got. There's stuff with messages. You can delete messages now, so you can get rid of old ones. They've added faction chat, which allows you to talk to everybody on the server in your faction. It's great for, hey, does anybody have this key? Does anybody see where PvP is? Hey, don't go to this LZ because there's guys camping it. All of that kind of stuff shows up here and everybody can see it. Along with the faction chat, we also got faction patches, another little addition So you can kind of tell when you're looking at people. If you can see their arm and you're close enough that you can make the patch out, that's there. But that's about all we have right now for faction identification. There was also the addition of an emote system now, which is with L. And it's pretty limited, but there's some stuff you can, there's some various things you can do. Thumbs up, you can sit down, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty simple, but it's there. I know some people want to use it when you're kind of LARPing and, mil-simming it up. So it's there for you now that you don't have to talk, that you can communicate. That little bit right there with the L as well is also as part of the helos that I forgot to mention, that when you hop on the helo, you don't have to sit there and wait for it to take off now. You can hit L and he'll leave as soon as you hit L, but you have to be the one that called the helicopter. So if your squad gets on and somebody else in the squad hits it, it doesn't do any good. It's the person who actually calls the helicopter that gets to hit L and make it leave right away. Now, more stash stuff. We've got packing. I'm not going to hit this because I've got my stash kind of nicely cleaned up here. But if you hit pack items, basically it pushes everything to the top. So all of the space would get filled up and everything at the bottom would be open. It does not sort. Keep that in mind. It doesn't sort anything. It just packs it. So it gives you space without sorting. Sorting would be nice, but we're here. We do have these throwable, the tabs here that allow you to sort through different items. So if you're looking for meds or you're looking for food, it's a little bit easier to find than it was before. Now, one of the kind of wonky systems that they're adding that's really early test phase, so therefore it isn't super good, is the Aggressor System. This is how they're dealing with people that grief and stuff like that. Like I said, it's very early stages. It needs a ton of tuning. They're super open to suggestions about it. They want to hear from the community on what they don't like, what they do like, suggestions to make it better. So don't hesitate to do that over in the Discord. They are paying attention. The downsides to this thing is even things simply as suppressing friendlies can get you aggressor status. I legit talking to a guy at an LZ and an AI walked out kind of behind him and started shooting, and I stepped around him and killed the AI, pretty much saving his life, and I got aggressor status for that. As well as if one of your squad mates goes down and you loot their stuff, like let's say I'm going to pick up your gun so you can have it, or I'm going to take your stuff so if you die again it doesn't disappear, that will get you aggressor status. And that aggressor status can be little too big. If you kill a player, it's usually really long. I've seen as long as an hour if you kill somebody or your own faction multiple times. It starts to stack up. And even if you leave the server, that sticks with you even if you go to another server. And what the aggressor status means is you don't get shot at when you come back to the home base or anything like that. But if you die, you can't loot your own body with aggressor status on, but others can loot you, as well as faction members can shoot you without punishment. So I've had an instance where a guy, I don't know, he thought I was a bad guy, I guess. He started shooting at me and he shot me a bunch of times and he didn't kill me. And we were just kind of looking at each other and I was mad. So I shot him in the face. And maybe it was a mean thing to do, but it was teaching him a lesson because I didn't like getting shot. And I didn't get punished for it because he had aggressor status. So just keep that in mind. It's in the game. It's going to be changing a lot, hopefully, because it's not in a good place right now. And it needs quite a bit of work. Some other interesting things that we've gotten, just quick points, blow through some of the stuff. They added squad waypoints. So when you are on your map and you drop a waypoint, everybody in your squad can see it. There's a number or a letter assigned to it so they know who put it down. You can loot incapacitated squad mates, which with the aggressor status, it's like, okay, they added a feature, but then they made the feature not work because of the aggressor status. Because if you loot your teammate, you get aggressor status. But hopefully they get this addressed, because what it does allow you to do is, let's say your buddy's incapacitated, he's in a coma, and you don't have all the meds you need to save him. You can actually pull the meds off his body and use them to save himself. So if you're a cheap bastard and you don't want to use your own meds, you can use your buddy's meds to save him. I mean, I guess it's his fault anyways. He's the one that got shot, so he should use his meds, right? There's also a huge one that I know a lot of people were looking for. It didn't bother me much, but a lot of people seem to care about this, and that was toggle for keybinds. So a lot of the keybinds have toggle options now that you can go through and play with. Go check that out if that's something you want. They are there now. Another interesting thing is the compatibility items kind of highlighting things. So if you click on a part and it can attach to another part, it will highlight that part. Or if you click on a gun, any parts that can attach to that gun, not necessarily the parts, but that completed gun as a whole, anything that can go to that will be highlighted. So it makes it a little bit easier when you're going through your stash and you're trying to put a gun together from parts you bought. You click on the gun, you can see all the parts that will go to it. Now that isn't absolutely everything, just so you know. there is a huge patch list thing they did. I got through a lot of the stuff, but if you look at the bug fixes, improvements, the list is just huge. They listed just about everything they could think of with all the stuff they did. I'll put a link to this down in the description if you want to check it out. The only place I've seen it is on Twitter. It might be on Steam. I haven't gone and looked through there yet. This is just the first place I saw it. If I can find those, I'll make sure to get those links in the description for you guys so you can go look at these for some of the specific bugs and UI changes they made. But this video would be 2 hours long if I went through and listed all of this stuff, and we don't want to do that. I just wanted to show you guys the most important parts of the video. But that's it. That's the whole video wrapped up. It was a little bit long, but I wanted to make sure to fill you guys in with everything there is so you can make the decision on if you want to come back and play or not, or if you want to give it a try for the first time. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to come in and stream and ask me. I'm streaming regularly, so come in. Even if I'm playing another game, it's fine. Come in and ask a Gray Zone Warfare question. I'm happy to answer what I can for you guys. But as always, appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Helps me out. I know sometimes you folks forget, and we're supposed to remind you. It's just part of the gig. But thank you guys anyways. I wish you the best of luck in your raids. The raids in Gray Zone, right? Yeah. Anyways, wish you the best of luck in your raids, and we'll see you in Lament.